deliberated today for 3 hours and 33 minutes, and the jury will be back deciding George Zimmerman's fate tomorrow morning. I'm back now with my guest and studio audience. I want to go to one member of the audience, Carol Fraser. Carol, you have a question for the panel. Yes.
I would like to preface my question by a statement made by the judge at the beginning of the case that race cannot be used, you know, the term in the case, right? Mm-hmm. Today, Omar had the audacity to say that it's possible that Zimmerman was intimidated by Trayvon because of all the burglaries that have been taking place in this neighborhood by African-American males, which is clearly racial profiling, and it already shows us his inability to be objective. So my question is, can the jury truly be objective?
Okay, Mark Lamont Hill, I mean, it's an interesting point because they also, of course, produced that young white woman who came out and testified, wow, I had these scary African-Americans intruding my home. The whole picture it was building up was that George Zimmerman was quite right to be looking at a young black teenager and thinking trouble. Yeah. That is racial profiling.
This entire from the moment that incident happened until this very moment, race has been shot through this entire ordeal. What they want us to do is pretend that race doesn't matter, and then at the very same time, smuggle in race through other means. And that's what's happening. They're smuggling in race by saying, look at Trayvon, look at these people that always get away.
Well, that takes me to my second question. This one is from Daniel Sorge. Daniel.
I'm around the same age as Trayvon, and would this case be different if it was me that night instead of him?
See, this is a great question because...
Can I answer?
No, you've had your chance. John Kelly, you could answer. But if Trayvon had been that young man, Daniel, would we be even debating this here?
We might be debating parts of it. I think there probably would have been an arrest much more quickly at that point. But Piers, the bottom line is this whole thing boils down to this stand your ground rule where you have a man who can take a concealed gun, initiate a confrontation, and then if he starts to lose, can shoot his opponent dead.
I mean, it wasn't, in the end, they didn't actually use stand your ground as their defense, although they could have done. Well, but the self-defense is almost the same thing. And it does seem to me, I mean, Judge Alex, I keep coming back to this. It does seem quite extraordinary that you can shoot an unarmed teenager dead and you don't even get arrested that night.
As you pointed out, this is not a stand your ground case. And I'm against stand your ground law in Florida. I wish they'd never passed it, but this is not a stand your ground case.
Good.
But
good.
The Castle Doctrine, which is what most of America uses, this would be the same analysis that's done across the country. They would do the exact same thing. It's not Florida. Basically, they would look at the perception of the individual. If you got up in the middle of the night and shot somebody coming through the window of your home, and it turned out to be a 17-year-old neighbor who your daughter invited over, you would not be prosecuted. It'd be unarmed, a 17-year-old. You weren't injured because your perception at that time is what matters. Was it reasonable or were you afraid? That's what the jury's deciding. Was George afraid and was his fear reasonable?
Right,
if it's not, he's guilty.
We're not in Zimmerman's castle. Yeah. Right?
It doesn't matter.
But both people had the right to be where they were that night. And I would concede that what this young man just asked is, yes, someone who shot you would have been arrested. And I take it even one step further and say that if you were female, you would have been arrested before they even asked a question, right? That some people are granted the right to feel fear from other sorts of people in our society, and that is not equitable in our society.
Okay, I want to do an interesting little experiment now, just with this audience. It's not scientific. I have no idea, before any of you came in, what your view is of this trial, and it doesn't really matter. The importance of this. I just want to know, of the 3 verdicts that could come in, right now, from everything you've seen and heard of this case, how would you, if you were a juror, vote here? So who would go for second-degree murder? So a few hands, maybe 5 or 6 hands. Who would go for an acquittal? Again, maybe 5 or 6 hands. Who would go for a manslaughter conviction? So the significant majority of this audience, and I suspect, Mark Lamont Hill, that also is reflective of a wider cross-section of Americans right now. Many people saying to me, it seems like the fairest way out of this would be a manslaughter conviction, even though it carries to George Zimmerman a very heavy sentence, mandatory at least 10 to 12 years.
Yeah, when you add the gun piece of it, it could be much longer than 10 to 12 years. I think you're right. I think that when there's a dead kid on the ground, and they know who shot him, it's very difficult for jurors to walk away and watch George Zimmerman go home at the end of the week. It's just hard mentally to come to that conclusion, so they feel like something has to be done. The fact is the prosecution didn't make the case. They did not make a case for second-degree murder. Regardless of what we think, they didn't make that case. I think they did make a case for manslaughter that is at least compelling.
Okay, so another break. When we come back, Martin Savage rejoins us with a live update from the courthouse in Sanford.